I'm Thuranki Ramacharaka. Thank you for visiting. All right, so I have something here that I'm going to share with you about relationships, interpersonal relationships. And this time it has to do with relationships with pets, which would largely include domesticated animals. And this has to do with matters of evolvement. So there's a lot of relevance here to the purpose of this channel. Right. Now, elsewhere, oh, by the way, I'm going from notes here that I wrote. I don't know if I ever really made a video about this in the past and had it on my prior Thuranki Ramacharaka channel some years back. If I did, I can't find that video. I haven't seen it in my archives. So I'm doing this again, and I just have written notes here for making the video, so I'm going to see what I come up with here from those notes. Elsewhere, I have discussed human interpersonal relationships. I have done so from the point of view that they incrementally serve to direct us toward the ultimate relationship with the universe. That was just a recent video in which I put it that way. With the divine, with the toward the macrocosm, let's put it like that, okay? Or toward the ultimate divine romance. Let's say our romance with other people, like that term, a significant other, in which we, as I pointed out in the video to which I'm suggesting here that I already made, I put it in terms of there are certain things about you and your relationships. Oh yeah, it was on something, interpersonal relationships and the fun factor, that video. All right, I mentioned that there are certain things about ourselves and our abilities to relate with another person interpersonally that come up only when you are in such a relationship, because they have to do with how you engage in that kind of a relationship. And I suggested that I implied that working through these things then can be seen as carrying over to how we involve ourselves with all personal relationships at all levels, including the biggest level of all, which I just stated. Now, a term which I attribute to Paramahansa Yogananda in his book entitled The Divine Romance, he calls that ultimate relationship, or the development of that ultimate relationship, the divine romance. And he suggests what I suggested in the prior video to which I'm referring here, that there is a very real sense, a very deep sense, in which all of our human relationships, especially these close ones, that involve romance especially, that can be seen as practice for, I guess, like progressing into deeper levels of relationship and romance with the divine ultimately, toward that ultimate one specifically. So I have done so from the point of view that they incrementally, step by step, serve to direct us toward the ultimate divine romance, to use his term. Now, here I address a related subject: the mutual evolvement that we share with our pet animals, our domesticated animals, which we bring into our lives or that bring themselves into our lives, our pet animals with whom we develop healthy relationships. Hopefully we develop healthy relationships with them. Okay, now I go into just bullet expressions here. Bullet statements. And so, all right, first of all, I have the group soul of animals. All right, perhaps you've heard of group soul rather than individual soul or unique souls, like typically, this is the way we think of ourselves, the human species, that each of us is separate in a sense at the soul level, like let's say when you die, here's just a common conception to help illustrate my point here, my general point. When you die, let's say reincarnation, all of that, something transmigrates over to the next life. So there is maintains some kind of like uniqueness that's yours that's going to reincarnate. Whether it's just a causal chain, or whether there's some monad that carries over, or whether it is a larger collection of things, like a soul, which is largely considered to be a composite thing that carries over. It's like that same, whatever that is, it's that thing reincarnating again, uniquely. It doesn't go along with all the other ones, like all other people's when they die. I mean, you don't go back when you die. The idea is we don't go back into some group thing that's just called humanhood. that involves really, it's just like one big soul of all humans, and then some individual, like unique part of it or some segment of it comes out and gets incarnated out of the one big thing. The collective thing is just one. There maintains on our idea here with humanity, with human beings. We are a species that carries through with some uniqueness. That our individuality or our uniqueness as a different person than everybody else carries through. It doesn't just show up at the time of birth. Okay. Having come from some overall collective where there's no differentiation. All right. Group soul of animals. So I've made a distinction here just now with unique soul between unique soul and group soul. All right. Now, we take it that most animals, in this way of thinking here, and I think there's a lot of truth to this. I've heard this from various sources. All right. But with many of what we call the animals, they are living ones, are instantiations, incarnate instantiations from a group soul. Like in the soul world, there's just like when it comes to cats, there's pretty much inclusively among all cats alive at that soul level, before birth, right? And even really kind of like during life, during their lives, they're part of a group soul. And what we may use as examples of that group soul, or at least group mind, and most definitions of soul, most conceptions of soul include mind, at least the higher plane of mind, a little beyond intellect. But when we come to talking about animals, intellect is it's a relative matter. But I'm trying to get to a more general point here without splitting hairs too much. We see group soul at work, and an example of at least group mind, to whatever extent there is mind, can be seen maybe in bees, ants, cockroaches, the insect world in large, the way they operate as a group. Like they all know what each other's thinking. And like there's some command central, where it's a group mind. And so if we just enlarge that picture a little bit, expand it to just talk about mind or soul itself with respect to any given animal species, there's a group soul. It's one, big one. Okay. Now, but I'm not suggesting that in all cases, like every specific animal, especially when it comes to domesticated ones, and I'll tell you why in a moment here. But some have achieved the first traces of uniqueness, individuality, in what we would call kind of a pedestrian use of the word, individuality. In other words, they've broken off from the group soul, the group thing, to some extent. To what extent? It's not important here. And I'm not prepared to discuss that. But anyway, we see the origins, the first approximations, at least, of individuality with some of them. Okay? Yeah, and there are reasons for that, and at least one such reason has to do specifically here with domesticated animals, which are our pets, but not all pets either. All right. We help them evolve toward this individuality. Their associations with us. And in turn, their presence helps us to have the opportunity to do so. Okay? I mean, if they weren't with us, there would be no such opportunity for us to help them evolve toward individuality. So it must be an interpersonal relationship going on. And then, more directly in turn, our doing so helps us to evolve. As I pointed out in that other video, when I was talking about just such interpersonal and close relationships with other people, gone about in a healthy way, both parties evolve. It's the same here. Our doing that, our intentional or unintentional, volitional or otherwise, doing so, helping them to evolve toward individuality, helps us to evolve. Now, and now my next note. Their unfailing trust, dependence, and love teach us how to do the same. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope so. I mean, that's a really cool point. And it's a logical one within the context of of my argument here. Okay. My next note. Usually within our own species, we develop relationships solely with those who are near to our own state of evolvement. I pointed that out in that other video. That is part of the fun factor, or the fouled-upness factor in our relationships with other people. We usually develop relationships solely with those who are near to our own state of evolvement, and that's true. We do. We don't hang out too much, too deeply, too long with those who are at a totally, they're in a totally different place. The law of analogy here now, the metaphysical law of analogy, carries over this principle to other species of the animal kingdom. That principle at work, that trend, we usually, within our own species, we develop relationships solely with those who are near to our own state of evolvement. This broadens and generalizes. By way of law of analogy, this principle carries over to other species of the animal kingdom, just at a different level of occurrence. The animal species that are close to us are the ones with which we develop these relationships. And then with individual members of those species most akin to our own natures. This analogy is similar to another one. That among occurrences or vibration frequency, that analogy, that is among occurrences or vibration frequency ranges among planes. That's another level of analogy, in fact. That's kind of like a description of the law of analogy. Occurrences or vibration frequency ranges among planes, like astral plane, mental plane, physical plane. There are the low regions, the low vibration of frequencies of each of those planes, and those planes at those ranges correspond with one another. So, like low vibration rates that manifest physically correspond with those that are manifesting astrally and mentally, okay, and spiritually, if spiritually is involved at all. Well, yeah, very low. Yeah, okay. Low physical frequencies correspond with low astral ones, etc. Although the planes are of quite differing overall frequency ranges or bandwidths. Oh, that's all I have here. Actually, I thought there was more, but I've reached the end. All right, so let me just throw in a little bit more description. See, we stand as an example of non-soul, of individualness, non-group soulness, but individual soulness. Now, I'm not talking about the same thing here exactly as I was in a more recent video about individuality in the true self sense of the word. From potential to actual at the deepest meaning of individual. I'm talking about differentiation versus non-differentiation. Being like unique, individual, different people at this soul level, as opposed to just all one at that level. All right, so let's say here comes a domesticated animal, a stray cat, pretty much just acts like all the other stray cats. Kind of a group thing. It just has a different physical body, a different this or that, just like, like bees, ants, right? Cockroaches. They appear different, but the inner workings are pretty much all just connected and all the same. And they pretty much act all the same. It's like, you see one cockroach and then you see another one. There's not much of a difference, One runs, the other runs. They run at the same time. It's like it's all the same cockroach showing up over and over in different places, And there are differences in time when we see them, and differences in space, location, and so forth. But otherwise, it's like the same one over and over. Maybe stray cats that haven't been around people much, not domesticated, and so they are around us, and it's like, oh, there's a stray cat. Oh, this time there's the stray cat, right? The one, like the common cold, shows up with you, shows up with me, shows up next year, but it's common. It's like the same cold over and over. Same one, like there's just one cold on Earth. And, it just keeps spreading around. It's same one over and over. It's not like your cold, my cold. Really, it's the cold. I caught the cold. I've got the common cold. It's common. It's like group cold. Ness. It's all one, just one. Okay? Well, there's the stray cat. There's the feral cat. There's the this. There's the that. And, this one happens to look blue, and that one happens to look brown. And other than that, it's the stray cat, inside there. All right? So they come into contact with us. Our influence on them. Stuff jumping around in here. In the dark. Help! Their association with us. Our unique expressions, our unique ways of being, our unique ways of doing things, their connection with us. See, we're more individual than they are. But we have an influence on them in that direction. So, we may take note, well, my pet seems to be very unique, very individual, He thinks he's a person, acting a lot like me. Those observations are connected with what I'm saying. They are breaking away from the group. It's at a very rudimentary and elementary level of it. And if we want to look at a course of evolvement through like from plant mind, from mineral mind, to go along with some more esoteric views of a bigger picture of that William Walker Atkinson and many others through history, and many traditions have provided and laid out, and some, occultists, Eastern and Western alike, have laid out, however accurately, but corresponding with one another. There's this movement from mineral mind to plant mind to animal mind, and then whatever is next. What was I getting at here? As things move on, what the heck was I saying? As things progress, there comes this increasing ability to develop uniqueness. Like, I don't know, I'm just going to wing it here, but if we look at quartz, wherever we find quartz, it's quartz. And maybe the shape of the, it's a different rock. Yeah, it has, it's broken differently. If it's broken, But it's all quartz, right? Now, big difference just in maybe impurity. You know, how many impurities are mixed in with it. It's quartz. One big quartz. There's pieces of it in different places, found at different times. It's the same quartz. Okay. All right. So when we come into contact with an animal, a domestic animal or a non-domestic one, but even through domestication, we're helping them to move in that direction. They are moving beyond just, like feralness, wildness, being all the same as one another. They come into contact with us, and as pets, we draw them toward the way we are. We are a more evolved being in this chain, in this, like mineral, plant, animal, and then within each of those we have different levels of evolvement. Like we might say that the bacteria or some kind of algae, microalgae, one little microalgae piece. It's not as an evolved plant as is the Venus flytrap. Okay. Within each species, like ours, we have more evolved human beings than others. Some seem to have barely a soul at all. So when a cat comes into our lives as a kitten, and then our influence, from whatever its starting point was with this, it becomes more, it progresses more in this direction that I'm talking about here. That's what we help them do. And that is a function of interpersonal relationships. A working toward evolvement. A working toward it becoming more. And that ultimate divine romance. Same thing. Same way. Wanted to point that out. Because what I was talking about in that previous video that I'm talking about here, about the fun factor and so forth, I want to show you how the law of analogy works. Another example of the law of analogy at work by providing this. It's metaphysically analogous to a different level of interpersonal relationship. And how it works is the same principles are at work. Another little instantiation of as above, so below. The law of analogy. Correspondence among planes. So, you can also not just get some really good conceptual advancement here, or a broadening and deepening of your understanding of the relevant themes here through what I've said, but this may help you relate with your pets. In fact, if you bear this all in mind with your pets, you may intend for this to happen. Tell them that this is happening and that this is what you want for them. How about that? If you really love your pet, maybe go ahead and do that. Send the little critter a mental image of that happening as you say it. Plant that into that animal's mind intentionally, and then act like it. Act like that's what you're doing. That gives it some power. You're turning it into a volitional act rather than an incidental one. Okay? Love your animal. Teach it to be more like you in these regards. Even if you don't act like a very good person, you're still helping that animal advance because you're at a different level of being than it is. Helping it to move to another level of being, let's say that there's some continuity. Once a little bit of pet, domesticated animal individuality is achieved, that I think you would say is at a higher level of such going on than is when it happens in the plant world, because it's now taking place in the animal world. Right? By the time it gets to okay, let's say that something there is now going to continue on in an individual manner and eventually maybe move out of the beast world into the human world of being, the human species. Let's say it goes like that, from mineral to plant to animal, if we can call ourselves non-beasts at all. Biologically, we're animals, yes, but then there's more. Okay. Then let's say it gets to a high level of beasthood and breaks into the human sphere next time around. Let's just say this is how it goes. This is for purposes of explanation to make my point. And it may be actual. It may refer to, the actual world, the way it works. Well, then, when it gets there, it's going to be at a low level of human development. But it's human. It has moved on to that level. Then there's progress through that evolvement. And so on. I'm making a general point here, though. I don't want to debate the details that I've laid out here. They may be accurate, they may be not, or they may not be. But my general point, I think, is quite accurate. We seek those who are more evolved than us to bring us further along, don't we? But it's hard to find those who are a lot more evolved, right? It's hard to do that because things stick together. They tend to group together with those who are at about the same level. Don't they? So it's like a special thing that happens, If a stray cat comes and sits on our porch and meows until we let it in. And then it's pretty damn appreciative too, right? It's like, thanks, man. I needed this. I need to be around you. This really helps me, man, in a lot of ways. And then that animal gives you its love, its devotion. And this helps you. This brings out those qualities in you more. It's a mutual thing. But on the two sides of that mutuality, there are different levels of these things going on. You may have conscious awareness of that this is helping you now move toward, move further in your divine realm. The animal, the pet, probably has no such thought. But it understands that it's moving forward in something. And you see it happen. Okay. I'm Theranki Ramacharaka. I hope I've made sense. Be well.